Sometime between 4 and 5 a.m., the wireless is finally working, but now there's a backlog of passenger traffic that has accumulated over the hours. Phillips and Bride get to work. In modern standards, the Marconi Company employees were overworked and underpaid. Being a large ship, the Titanic had to carry on the radio, which was kept on for 24 hours. But then priority was given to passengers' messages, bulk of which were basically pointless greetings like, "Weather good, will be in New York by Wednesday morning, hope to see you there." However, it was these messages which made the revenue for the company. In terms of salary, the salary of a radio operator working at sea was higher than his co-workers on land. And along with this, the Marconi Company actually paid for their accommodations, though they had to pay their stewards themselves. Records show us that the senior wireless operator Jack Phillips earned £4.50 per month, plus zero tips as they did not meet passengers whose messages would be sent instead by the purser's office. There was a tube in purser's office, and the passengers would write their message, and then the purser would put it in that tube and it would get carried up to the Marconi shack, the wireless room. And you might be surprised to hear this, but the lowest paid job below decks was that of a trimmer in the black gang, and he made £5.3 per month, much more than the senior operator. At 8 a.m., leading fireman Frederick Barrett revealed at the inquiry that the last 3 double-ended boilers were lit as per the bridge's request. The deck crew also changed watches. Lookouts George Simons and Archie Jewell are replaced by Alfred Evans and George Hogg, while officers Moody and Boxhall are replaced by Pittman and Lowe as junior officers of the watch. At 9:12 a.m., the Titanic receives its first iceberg warning of the day from westbound steamer RMS Caronia. Captain Smith acknowledges this in his reply at 10:28 a.m., and according to surviving officers, all of whom could remember this warning, it was only marked on the chart at 4 p.m. Talk about negligence. Now it's important that we clear a misconception here. A lifeboat drill was supposed to take place on 14th April at 11 a.m., but it was cancelled by Captain Smith. Not because he wanted to deliver a last church service, and that's because he was not planning to retire after the Titanic's maiden voyage. Instead, the reason was that the engines were running perfectly and Titanic was making excellent progress in calm weather and perfect visibility conditions. And in order to conduct the drill, they would have to stop engines and restart all that once again after the drill was over. So Smith decided to postpone the drill. In hindsight, this was a deadly decision. At 10:30 a.m., church services are held. The first class service is led by Captain Smith himself. Every attendee is given a copy of White Star Line's prayer book, and a band of 5, including the pianist, accompany the singing. Molly Brown recalled that only half of the passengers attended the service, while Colonel Gracie recalled the hymns sung as "O God, our help in ages past," and another one which he described as "Prayer for Those at Sea," but he couldn't remember the title. Second class holds 2 services. The Protestant one is led by Assistant Purser Reginald Barker, whereas passenger Father Thomas Biles leads the Catholic services. They also sing the same hymn, and later in the day, second class will also hold another service. Once the service is finished, Father Biles goes down to third class and holds another service for them. But unfortunately, the details of this worship service are unknown. At 11:47 a.m., Dutch steamer SS Noordam sends an ice warning to the RMS Caronia for the Titanic. This warning was acknowledged by Captain Smith at 12:31 a.m. and he acknowledged this in his personal reply, which was sent via the Caronia. But We don't know how the captain and his officers reacted to this warning. At 12 p.m., the previous day's run is calculated, as always. 546 miles steamed since 12 p.m. yesterday. Average speed is 22.06 knots. When this is posted in public services, a rumor again begins among passengers that they are more likely to arrive in New York on Tuesday evening instead of Wednesday morning. Around 12:45 p.m., Captain Smith shows Second Officer Charles Lightoller the warning he has received from the Caronia, the first one. At 1:49, Dutch steamer SS America sends Titanic a message about icebergs it has passed, with instructions to relay it to U.S. Hydrography Office via Cape Race Station once Titanic comes into contact with Cape Race. At 1:54, RMS Baltic sends an ice warning from Greek steamer SS Athenae, and this is acknowledged at 2:57 by Captain Smith, and reply is sent. Again, we don't know how the crew reacted to this warning. At 5:50 p.m., the Titanic changes course at 265 degrees true in a maneuver known as turning the corner. The corner is a point in shipping lane, in the transatlantic shipping lane, where you have to turn once if you're going from Europe to America. And contrary to popular belief, this turning happened at the right time. It wasn't actually delayed. Sometime between 5 and 6 p.m., RMS Baltic sends a message from German steamer SS Prinz Friedrich Wilhelm. Though this message is now lost, we know the transmission did occur because the Baltic's wireless log mentions it, though some historians have questioned the whole story. They think maybe this message wasn't sent. Around 6 p.m., Mr. Ismay stumbles upon first-class passengers Mrs. Ryerson and Mrs. Thayer on the promenade deck, and he shows them the warning received from the Baltic. You might ask, what is he doing with this? So basically, Captain Smith gave him this warning in the afternoon, and we don't know Captain Smith actually placed it on the chart first or just gave it to Mr. Ismay, because Vauxhall couldn't remember it. But apparently, this warning, this piece of paper, was taken away by Captain Smith around 7 p.m. But this is again a very complicated story. At 6:30 p.m., a new ship enters our story. The British cargo ship SS Californian is bound from Liverpool to Boston. Actually, they were coming from London to Boston, and they had stopped in Liverpool for some time. This ship has a capacity of 55 crew members and 44 passengers, though this time on this voyage they are only carrying cargo, so the passenger spaces are empty. It's commanded by Captain Stanley Lord. At 6:30 p.m. on the clock on board the Californian, the ship passes by 3 icebergs close to each other. Captain Lord orders his wireless operator Cyril Evans to send these warnings to nearby ships, and he decides to be more careful. Around 6:52 p.m. on Titanic's clocks, the Titanic sees her last sunset. First-class passenger Mrs. Mary Jervan later recalled this, saying, "The weather was exceptional. The trip was one of the most beautiful of the season. We had at our disposal 3 walking decks and a large well-appointed lounge, where there were concerts twice a day. The passengers prepared for a concert on Monday, and the profits from this were to be sent for poor shipwrecked sailors." Around 7 p.m., dinner is served on board. The recently lit 3 double-ended boilers are now connected to the engines, and the Titanic is traveling at full speed. Officer Lightoller notes that the air temperature is 6.1 degrees Celsius. Around 7:05, First Officer Murdoch arrives on bridge after finishing his dinner to relieve Officer Lightoller, so he can finish his own dinner. And between 7:10 and 7:15 p.m., Captain Smith takes the ice warning received from the Baltic, which was in Mr. Ismay's hands until now, and he takes it so that they can mark it on the chart. And this happens in the first class smoking room. Around 7:15, as the Titanic is entering an ice field, Officer Murdoch orders lamp trimmer Samuel Hemming to close the forecastle hatch. And this is to make sure the light coming from it does not distract the vision of lookouts or the officer on the watch at bridge. And you may not know this, but even today it is standard practice to maintain night vision on bridges. Even today they follow this. At 7:22, Harold Bride hears the Californian transmitting a message about the ice field, but he does not stop to write it down or acknowledge it. Between 7:30 and 7:35 p.m., Lightoller returns from dinner, and together with Officer Pittman, they take sights of stars. It takes nearly 10 minutes, and the air temperature has dropped from 6.1 to 3.9 degrees Celsius. At 7:37, the Californian sends an ice warning to SS Antillon, which Harold Bride notes down, and when the Californian contacts the Titanic to inform them about the same thing, Bride replies they have received it already, and within 2 minutes, he takes this to the officer of watch, who's Lightoller. His watch will end at 10 p.m. At 8 p.m., Officer Boxhall arrives on the bridge to begin his watch, and in the chart room he meets Pittman, who's about to leave, and he tells him, "Here's a bunch of sights for you, old man. Go ahead." Boxhall picks up where Pittman left off. The air temperature has now dropped from 3.9 to negative 0.6 degrees Celsius. At 8:30 p.m., the second class passengers assemble in the dining saloon for a second service. The reason behind this service was that the Reverend Ernest Carter had missed the morning services, so he asked a passenger named Lawrence Beasley to request the purser if they could book the dining salon for church service in the evening. The purser said okay, so Reverend Carter asked passengers to assemble in the salon after dinner at 8:30 p.m. And at this service they sang the hymn "Eternal Father, Strong to Save," which is also known as "Peril on the Sea," according to survivor Lawrence Beasley. Around 100 people were present at this service. At 8:55, after finishing his dinner and smoking 2 cigars and after-meal coffee, Captain Smith excuses himself from the dinner party held by the Widener family in his honor at the Cartier restaurant, and he heads to the bridge because he knows the ship is now entering an ice field. On the bridge, he converses with Lightoller for around 20 to 30 minutes about the weather. And that's because, you see, the sea was calm like a mill pond, as many survivors said later on. And it was also a moonless night, so they could not see the icebergs, nor could they hear waves breaking on icebergs. So Smith tells him, "If it becomes at all doubtful, let me know at once. I will be just inside." And then he retires to his cabin for the night. At 9:30 p.m., Lightoller tells Officer Moody to call the lookouts in Crow's Nest and tell them to keep a sharp lookout for ice, particularly small ice and growlers, and to keep passing on this warning with each shift until daylight. At 9:52 p.m., SS Mesaba's wireless operator Stanley Adams sends an ice warning to the Titanic. But instead of receiving an official reply, he only receives a casual one: "Received, thanks." At 10 p.m., Murdoch takes the watch on the bridge. Lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee take their places in the Crow's Nest. The Titanic has now traveled 45 nautical miles in the past 2 hours. Average speed is 22.5 knots. A number of passengers noticed that at this point the engines are pushing the ship harder than at any other point throughout the voyage. At 10:33 p.m. on Titanic's clock and 10:21 p.m. on the Californian's clock, the Californian encounters more ice, and eventually it is surrounded, and because Captain Lord had never taken his ship into an ice field before, he decides to stop for the night. Lord converses with his chief engineer to keep steam ready so they can get underway as soon as it's daylight. He also orders Cyril Evans, his wireless operator, to send the news that their ship was stopping for the night as they are surrounded by ice. Around 11 p.m., Quartermaster George Rowe on the docking bridge at the stern notices an abnormal atmospheric phenomenon, which we now know as whiskers around the light. So what happens in whiskers around the light is that tiny ice particles in the air, when they are caught in the glow of deck lights, they give off a prism of color. At 11:07, Cyril Evans begins sending the message, "I say, old man, we are stopped and surrounded by ice," to the Titanic. But Phillips cuts him off with the reply, "Shut up, I am busy working Cape Race." Phillips was sending passenger traffic to the radio station at Cape Race Lighthouse at this time and had his headset on full volume. So the reason he rebuffed it is not only because it rang loudly in his ears, but because it also did not have MSG prefix. MSG prefix means Master Service Gram, which means this is a message for the captain. So because this prefix wasn't there, he simply thought it was a land troll or some other operator wanting a casual chat. And land trolls were basically amateur radio operators who often interfered with ships' radio when the ships were close to shore, like Titanic was near Cape Race, so it was possible that some troll would interfere. Phillips then recontacts Cape Race and was busy sending passenger traffic as late as 11:25. That's when Evans shuts down his radio and goes to sleep at 11:35. So in case you don't know, 11 p.m. was the standard time for Marconi operators to sign off. They could continue working after that if they wanted, but it wasn't required. Ladies and gentlemen, the first hour of the Titanic disaster will be discussed separately in detail in a separate video. For now, I would like to thank you for watching.